Hey everybody, Dr. Diane, your libido doc here. In this video, we're going to talk about libido and antidepressants and happiness. So you'll see another video on this channel where I dive into the vicious cycle that we can get into sometimes where essentially sex and regular sex can actually help with life satisfaction, with happiness. But if we're not feeling happy, then we are not driven to have more sex. So another component of how sex can actually bring happiness is when we are at the end of sex, we actually tend to get a huge release of serotonin. So when we orgasm, when we finish a sex act, we tend to have a flood of serotonin, our happy hormone. Serotonin leads to this feeling of being satisfied. So when we're satisfied, we don't tend to want more in that moment, right? Sometimes after sex, there can be moments where it's like, that was so much fun, I want to go again, yada, yada. That can happen, of course. But from a purely hormonal perspective and how these hormones work in the body, we don't tend to, like when we have serotonin is like, I am satisfied. I'm so satisfied with everything right the way it is, right? So that's why we can have a sense and a connection of happiness. So that's also why things like SSRIs, which is a category of antidepressants, which raise serotonin in the brain, can lower our sex drive, is because this hormone is not hugely motivating, it's hugely satisfying. And so when we have higher levels of serotonin, because we're taking an antidepressant, we typically can see a lower libido because that is not a hormone that drives motivation, that drives desire. That hormone is dopamine, right? When we have dopamine, higher levels of dopamine, that's what drives more desire. So make sure you consider this when you're considering an SSRI. Make sure you're considering this when you're considering antidepressants that impact serotonin. And maybe they're right for you, maybe they're not. That's a question for you and your doctor, but it's just an important consideration to really take into account when considering medications like that is this particular side effect worth it? And if you're experiencing that side effect, to understand where that is coming from. So sometimes sex, and again, this is not medical advice because this is just a YouTube channel, but again, sometimes we see that sex and engaging regularly about once a week at a minimum of sexual intimacy can hugely combat things like depression. We see a huge relationship in research between happiness and sex. So you'll see more about that research in other videos on this particular channel. If you want more help for you, for your relationships, for getting to the root causes of low sexual desire disorder, low libido, please do check information out about how to work with me in the show notes. Again, I'm Dr. Diane. I'll see you in another video.